Hey there, we're back for episode 2, and I'm here to torture myself. As I said in episode 1, dedicating this episode all to the trade talks here again, and then I got to move on from this stuff. But I've already showed Jamieson Greer earlier in the week on earlier episodes. The guy has not changed his tune at all. He's saying the same things over and over again in every interview. That's why I believe him. The reason why I'm torturing myself is look at her, my nemesis. Yeah, I can't stand this woman. Barton. I can't stand her. She lies through her teeth. She's the right hand of the government, and she interrupts people. She cuts them off all the time, and she stammers and stutters, and it just drives me crazy. So all I did was swear the first episode. I'm going to try my best not to insult her, not to swear, not to do anything. Can't guarantee. But Rosemary, I really don't like you. There we go. Deep breath. And go.
Ambassador Greer, nice to see you. Thanks for making the time for Canada today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, it was just a week ago, incredibly, that you and your counterpart, Dominic LeBlanc, shook hands outside, seemed pretty confident that there was a deal to be had. From your perspective, what happened that caused the talks to collapse over the following 2 days after that?
Well, I will say from the U.S. side, we felt very, very confident in the deal we had struck late Tuesday night, shortly before a deadline. And we felt confident enough that we added on a few extra days to just get everything down on paper. We had agreed to, as I've shared before in the press, really the best deal available to any country on the planet with respect to Canada. And then, the Minister LeBlanc went back to Ottawa, and they spoke with premiers, spoke with the...
Here, let's pause it there. Okay. Now, we know that Trump tariffed the hell out of the entire world, and that sucked for everybody. And he's an asshole for doing it. We all know. We know it. But the fact still remains is between 70 to 85%, whatever number you want to believe, they're all different numbers out there, of our exports is to the U.S. We depend on them for everything, basically everything. So whether we like it or not, we need to deal with them. So if that was the best deal we could get, maybe we should have taken it.
The Prime Minister, and when they came back, they had some additional views, they had some additional requests, they had some additional things that were too much for the United States. It wasn't something we could do at the time. We felt that giving them the best deal in the world would have been enough to get us over the hump and put us on a positive track to even bigger and better things.
Okay, and I will get to some of the issues that certainly Canada has raised in the media, but I also want to point to the fact that the president himself was asked yesterday in an interview whether you guys, the U.S., had added some things at the last minute, and he didn't deny it. He even said, hey, that sounds like me. So were there things that the United States added in those last couple of days, and why were they added at that point?
Yeah, no, they weren't, and I think anyone who watches the clip or hears what the president told CNN, it was off the cuff. He said, that sounds like me. The reality is the last time the president spoke with Prime Minister Carney was Tuesday night, and there was some meeting of the minds. And so the Canadian story has been, well, it was later in the week that things were added, and that's, we felt, the president, we all felt so comfortable that there was a meeting, there were agreements on specific rates, specific percentages, et cetera. Hard to change those things after a given time.
Okay, well, let me go through some of the things that the Prime Minister and the Canadian government has raised as issues, some of which they say Secretary Lutnick added sort of at the end as well. But I'll go through the issues to start. First of all, the issue of excluding medium and heavy-duty trucks from this deal. That would have an enormous impact on Canada, as I'm sure you would understand. There'd be job losses, plant closures. Given that, is the goal of the Trump administration to remove auto manufacturing from Canada entirely? Because I think that was the fear from the Canadian government.
Well, just a couple things here. The U.S. goal in its entire trade policy, because remember, it's global. It's not like Canada alone or something. We are trying to reindustrialize 25 years of suffering from globalization, where we lost 5 million jobs, 70,000 factories. So with respect to this issue of medium and heavy trucks, for weeks when I've been speaking with my Canadian colleagues, I've been clear about what we believed we could deliver, including about autos. We have a Section 232 measure on autos and pickup trucks. And there is a separate action on medium and heavy trucks that is separate and distinct and different. The economics are different, the way it operates is different, et cetera. The effective tariff rates are different. And so to kind of bring that in at the end and say, well, when we say autos, we really mean everything from a little Escort to the biggest truck you can think of. So it's less a matter of excluding it and more a matter of an effort. And I understand why the Canadians want to have as much as they can get and try to expand concessions from the U.S. But we are focused on doing what's good for America and accommodating Canada to the extent we can.
Yeah, and I get what you're trying to do from an industrial policy perspective, but of course, and you're applying it to all countries, certainly, but the integration between Canada and the U.S. is different, and that's what makes the impacts, as you would well know, so much more severe. So just to go back to whether you understand that Canadians and the Canadian government might see that exclusion on those trucks as a sign that the United States is not interested in having an integrated auto production industry.
Well, I certainly think, and I don't think this is any secret, we believe that the process of globalization for the United States, of integrating with other economies, even our close neighbors with whom we trade a lot, we think that has had some negative effects, especially in places like Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Again, we saw 5 million manufacturing jobs go away. And a lot of those went to Mexico and China, Vietnam. Some went to Canada. But I have to say, too, I mean, Canada, they've done the globalization thing, and you've lost half a million manufacturing jobs over the past 20 years.
Sure.
So it's not something where the United States alone is having a challenge.
No, except in this issue, and I'll move on after this, but in this issue, Canada remains the largest customer for U.S. cars, for American-built cars. So it's not like you're not getting anything out of that integration in the industry there.
Well, remember, back in the 60s, Canada did a very Trumpian thing, and they said to the big three, the American big three, if you're going to sell in Canada, you have to build factories here. And at the time, the big three, had a lot of influence. They said, fine, we'll do this. We think maybe we can do some things cheaper up there. If there's going to be this approach from the Canadian side, says you have to build here to sell here. So that was not like a natural economic growth. That was a deal. It was the Canadians did a very savvy thing. And now, after many years of the Auto Pact, NAFTA, USMCA, we have been able to see we still need to have, we have a big gap in our manufacturing employment here, and autos is a big part of that.
Okay, I'll move on to another issue that the Prime Minister raised, and that is that Canada says the United States wanted a say in new trade deals that it would be pursuing, particularly that you wanted to review and even in certain instances dictate terms for future deals, which the Prime Minister viewed as sort of attack on Canada's sovereignty. Is that something you were asking for, and why did that make sense to you, Ambassador?
So no, it's not, and I think that characterization goes far beyond anything we've discussed. For a year and a half, we've had Canadian officials at federal, provincial levels coming to America and saying, we want to create Fortress North America, their term, not mine. And they've talked about this. And to us, what does that mean? It means that if we are going to lower our tariff barriers that we have in place for national security to protect sectors like steel, aluminum, cars, if we want to give better treatment like we were offering to Canada, the best treatment in the world, we expect other countries to also protect their borders. Canada has done a safeguard on steel. We think they need to do more to protect the North American market. Mexico itself, they've been raising tariffs on various Asian goods to protect the North American market. I would say in USMCA originally, there was actually a provision in there where Canada, Mexico, and America all agreed that if anyone ever joined a free trade agreement with a non-market economy country like China, that country could get kicked out of the deal. So there's kind of a long history of trying to defend North American market, and so it's bizarre to me to hear this suggestion that Fortress North America, you can say it, but when it gets down to brass tacks and you want to actually collectively protect this market and these critical sectors, that they're not going to do it.
But just to be clear then, you did not...
Okay, now she's stuttering, so good time to stop it. So let's break this down. I gotta think for a second here. So what he's saying is they have this agreement between USA, Canada, and Mexico that if they're going to trade outside in these particular sectors, outside North America, including Mexico, that's who's in the agreement, that there has to be these protections. And we as a nation aren't living up to that. I also heard in the news that, they were afraid basically of the Chinese steel coming into Canada and finding its way into the United States. So that's basically what he's saying. And apparently the Chinese steel is not the same quality as what we make or the US makes or anything else. It's just not top grade. It's weak. I guess that's why everything you get from China breaks. Let's continue.
Not view this as asking Canada to refer to you or to go back to you, consult with you, if it was going to strike a new trade deal around the terms of it, or were you expecting that? Was that part of what you? No.
We didn't have any text like that, right? We talked about let's coordinate on a bilateral basis, right? It wasn't Canada shall or anything like that. It's let's talk about this. But when it comes to things like steel and aluminum, the idea is if we're going to lower our tariffs and give you the best deal in the world on steel and aluminum, we can't have Canada be a place where you can get flooded with steel and aluminum from other countries and be used as a backdoor into the U.S. I mean, it's just economics and protection. Again, our view was there's a way to bring Canada along, but we have to have mutual protection.
Okay, on the issue of discoverability, which is something maybe people don't talk a lot about, but it's essentially discoverability in French, so that when people in this country log on looking for, on streaming services for French language programs, that was an issue. Was there ever an agreement on that from your perspective? Did it change at the last minute? What actually happened on that front? Because it's not clear to me.
Sure. So first of all, and importantly, the President Trump, myself, and the U.S. government recognizes the importance and sensitivity of the French language in Canada, in Quebec, in areas in the Maritimes, in some areas. And we know that this is quite sensitive and quite important. And we actually champion the use of French. I mean, that's part of Canadian Quebecois identity. Now, there have been in the past discriminatory laws that target U.S. streaming companies that say you have to give 5% of your earnings to fund your competitors. And then there is this issue of discoverability about promoting it. This is something where the United States, we always have questions about this. This is something we talked about, but we showed a lot of flexibility. And our view is there was no way we would let a good deal go by for something like this. So this is not something where we push hard or condition or red line. It's like the farthest thing from a red line. We were really focused on those taxes.
Let him talk.
I understand that, Ambassador, but I understand it wasn't a red line, but it was an issue that you raised with the Canadian government that you wanted some change to.
We highlighted it, right? I mean, our view is you should let capitalism do its thing and let people pick. But we know that this is important to Quebec. So for us, this is not a red line. It's been presented in the Canadian press like some big thing that we held the line on. This is not true at all. I mean, we don't. It's totally fine. We think that we understand why you would want to have discoverability for Francophone material.
Okay, just to go back to the timeline a little bit. Again, you said that the president.
But let's think about this. Okay, Netflix and all these other companies, Facebook, whatever, it's all American. They're American companies. why don't we have Canadian companies do shit? Why not? What's wrong with that? But anyways, we don't. So why? I've never understood why our government taxes American companies. Doesn't make sense. I mean, for content, it's stupid. And as he says, it's discriminatory. Just for Canadian content and French content,
And the Prime Minister spoke on Tuesday. But it does, from the Canadian perspective, sound like changes were made between Tuesday and Friday when the Prime Minister had to pull the plug, he believed. So are you telling me that there were no changes made from your perspective over those course of those couple of days, whether it be you or Secretary Lutnick, who offered new things, that put new things on the table, even just details?
So that's right. I mean, the Prime Minister and the President had an agreement. We had agreement about tariff rates, right? Canada would go from 25% to 15% on autos, with the possibility of going down to 7%. On aluminum, you go down from 50 to 25. Steel, 50 to 25 for most of what's sent here. On derivatives, taking down 25 to 10 percentage points off of it. That's all the case. When we got down to talking about what the text could look like, our Canadian colleagues, the word they used was concerns, right? I won't go into too much more detail because we are trying to respect the confidentiality we extend to each other. In their view, they thought it might be fair to say they believe the implementation of our agreement that they disagreed with. But in our sense, when I say I'm giving you the best deal possible, let's take your idea of Fortress North America and work with it. We can put to the side things like discoverability and a variety of other things, and we can soften language here and there. To me, there was an agreement. There was a way to get to it. I don't know what ended up happening. You read things in the press about premiers and different things like this and politics going on. I don't know. All I know is this was Canada's had the best deal. We offered an even better deal.
Yeah.
It would have been a springboard for future progress for us. And now that's gone away.
I mean, it's a better deal than what happened, than yesterday, but it's not a better deal than when CUSMA itself was being respected by the United States, which is not the case now, Ambassador, as you know. And one of the things that Prime Minister also raised was this issue of reliability. He points to the fact that other countries have made deals with your country. He said it looked like they were signed on pencil because they've changed overnight. So why would Canada sign a deal without even any guarantees that you would continue to respect the deal, given that you haven't respected CUSMA?
So which deal is that we haven't respected?
Ooh. This is getting interesting here.
That we've signed over the past year. I'm just not familiar with that. I mean, we have made
you've added tariffs.
A dozen deals.
You've added tariffs. I'm talking about Canada. You've added tariffs, right, above and beyond the free trade agreement, and that sort of contradicts what a free trade agreement is, of course.
So we have USMCA. And we built into it a 6-year review because in our view, you can't just sign an agreement and never revisit it. If you have it eternally, like if I'm a business person, which we try to be in the American government, we try to think about what's good for workers, what's good for companies. You don't have an agreement that just goes on forever without ever being revisited. We have not renewed USMCA. USMCA includes specific exclusions for national security measures. And so steel, aluminum, autos, these are all national security measures for us. That fall within the exclusions within USMCA. So we're doing what's right for the United States. We've offered to bring Canada along. Wasn't good enough for them, and so we are where we are.
So what will it take to get back to the table, Ambassador? Who makes the first move here in your mind?
Well, the Canadians put out a press release saying they were suspending the talks. The Canadian side is proceeding with additional retaliation and a variety of things like that. So it's not clear to me on that front. I mean, the reality is we have a trade policy. It's global in nature. We're proceeding with it. If there's further retaliation from the Canadian side, we of course we're not going to just sit down and take that. Our view is don't retaliate. But I know that I know how people are feeling in Canada and what they think. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and we have our own trade policy, and we'll proceed with it. in the way that's best for the United States.
You know, you say you know how people feel about it in Canada, and I'm sure you've seen things and you've heard things. But Canadians are, I think, rightly very frustrated and upset that it has come to this with our closest trading partner and neighbor. Particularly frustrated with some of the rhetoric from your boss. You know, even a meme today from the White House Instagram account of an eagle attacking a Canadian goose. I mean, does that not kind of make it harder to get a deal, to get to a place where people can actually make some sense of what this relationship is going to be going forward?
I would just say my job is quite narrow, and on the trade relations, it's quite narrow, right? It's about economics. And again, we have a situation, we have a global trade policy. Canada is the only country to retaliate against us besides China. And even with China, we've kind of settled out. So really, it's just Canada at this point. Canada has banned the sale of liquor and spirits. We haven't banned anything from Canada. They've capped the type of autos we can bring in. They've banned certain goods and services from procurement in the provinces. Again, we've never done these bans. It's quite extreme.
But
maybe
Ambassador, I mean, Ambassador, would you have expected Canada just to sit back and take it? I mean, you're a businessman. That's not how business is done. You just accept something that's imposed on you?
Well, no, that's why we're having a negotiation. That's why we had a negotiation, and we agreed, fine, we understand this is, you want a better, you have the best situation and you want it to be better. And so we did that. If you look at every country in the world, I mean, we've got countries that have 250 million people, trillion, $2 trillion, $4 trillion economies, big economies, the EU, who we've been able to come to terms with. And I'm not saying people like it, I understand that, but I'm doing what's right for America, other countries doing what's right for them. And anybody who has some kind of a trade dispute or something, eventually it ends in a negotiation where you settle out and each side thinks like, well, I would have rather had this, but you find a compromised position. And we're not there with Canada.
Okay, I'll just quickly end. Are you still talking to Minister LeBlanc? Are you hopeful you can get back to that negotiation?
I would say we don't have open channels right now. I have a good relationship with Minister LeBlanc, but right now I think the Canadian side is talking about their next steps.
Okay, Ambassador Greer, it was good of you to make the time. I know a lot of Canadians wanted to hear from you, so thanks for doing it with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, this episode's getting a little long in the tooth already, so I'll just say this. There's a lot to unpack there. I believe the guy. I really do. He's been saying the same stuff all week, as I've said. And I'll give credit where credit's due. Rosemary did good on this one. I can't stand the woman, but she did ask some really good questions. I don't think she believes him, but I do. From his perspective, I believe him. Do I agree with him? Not necessarily, but I believe him. So, good on you, Rosemary. I know I've put you down, and I will again. But you did good on this one, so hats off to you on that one. And I never thought I'd say that, but that was a decent interview for her. It's nice to see this guy talking like an adult. And that kind of puts our Premier Ford to shame. Dougie, be a grown-up. This guy, Jamieson Greer, is not about to say anything bad about Donald Trump. Or his head will be on the chopping block. But anyways, I don't know. I believe the guy. I don't believe Donald Trump, anything that comes out of his mouth, and I sure as hell don't believe anything that comes out of Carney's mouth. So I think everybody needs to shut the hell up and get back to the bargaining table because they were pretty close on a deal. So get the deal done and just move on. Let's get it done. It might not be the greatest deal, but let's have a deal. Let's have some certainty for people's jobs and businesses. Let's get this done and move on. Anyways, thanks for spending some time with me. I hope you learned something from all this. And take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Wishing you many blessings. Bye for now.